So, are we going to do health reform? You know, instead of yes we can, actually no we can't. Now, it's the mother of all ironies. I mean, this is not lost on anyone in the room. This was Ted Kennedy's seat. The irony is compounded by the fact that Massachusetts has already got the health reform that we were talking about doing nationally. It was voted for by Senator-elect Brown. And post-election, my colleagues at Kaiser Family Foundation and Harvard found that 68% of Mass voters actually still say they support the Massachusetts plan, which is interesting. So they've got theirs, and they were going to have to pay taxes for the rest of the country, and that, I think, was one of the smart objections. What's happened, though, is basically every moderate Democrat in the House and Senate is running for the hills right now. Because they're all saying, if Ted Kennedy's seat goes in a 37% swing, what the hell's going to happen to me in Arkansas or Louisiana? Now, bear in mind that this was a telegenic former Newt centerfold who outworked the dullest politician in America 5-1. But I don't want to suggest that this wouldn't have happened anyway. This is a complete repudiation of the health reform initiative, and we'll get into that in a second. So the Democrats, in my humble opinion, have four options. The first option, which was rejected almost immediately by everyone, including the president himself, is to cheat and steal. Basically, pass the bill before he even gets there and pretend the Tuesday election didn't happen. That's not going on. The second option is basically to say, go back and negotiate with Olympia Snowe and maybe Susan Collins. The problem is you've now got to get 7 to 10 to 20 moderate senators in the House, in the Senate, and 50 or so frightened blue dogs in the House to come on board. That is unlikely to happen too. Now, what may still happen is some kind of ram it through, as we call it, on a reconciliation basis, using the arcane rules around budget reconciliation acts that only require a 50 threshold. I would say that's extremely unlikely and would bring out the wrath of the Tea Party going forward. By the way, the Tea Party, if you read the New York Times this morning, can't even organize their own party. Apparently it's all fallen apart because over Sarah Palin's speaking fees. The fourth option is to make it a bipartisan bill. That's a lot more difficult because I think fundamentally it's tough to construct a bipartisan bill when the Republicans really don't want government to do anything. I mean, it's not exactly in their accord to have a big government plan, and especially now. Now, there was a bipartisan bill that could have been the foundation in the Wyden-Bennett plan. That never was a starter, unfortunately, and I think many of us who are more moderate would believe that would have been a great place to start. There's talk in sort of modest circles about scaling back reform. Bob Leshevsky, who writes a wonderful blog, who's a moderate Republican experienced insurance executive, has suggested that we could do some insurance regulation, small business tax credits, and a modest Medicaid expansion. And there's talk from my colleagues anyway that there are folks in the Senate who are trying to figure out whether there is some compromise around that could be enacted later on yet to be specified. And then what I've actually believed from day one is if I had been advising Obama, I would have said, go to the Republicans and say, what do you want to do? And we'll do all of them. And basically, and Sally can speak better to this than I can, it's a short list of things the Republicans wanted to do. Now, personally, I don't think any of them would have worked hell well, but that's okay. We could have agreed to do all of those and then some more. And we may get into that in the panel. So basically, we're at a stalemate in my view. What's interesting is that the polling, even up until last Friday, the country is basically divided pretty evenly on this, and the support hasn't moved that much. This is the ABC News Washington Post polls. Support opposed. That there was a dip over the weekend. So one poll showed the opposition, the support falling from 44 to 37%. But generally speaking, these polls have been in the same range over time. But a growing discontent. Interestingly, the public still believes if they have a choice between taxing high benefit plans or taxing rich people, they'd much prefer to tax rich people. And the real deal is this chart from the Kaiser Family Foundation, which is that Democrats are in support of the plan, Republicans are against the plan, and independents have turned against. Many of them strongly opposed to the plan. So it really is the case that the independent voice has been heard here, and there is very strong opposition to the passage of health reform on the right the center.